Have you ever felt lost, utterly disconnected, or like you've strayed so far you are beyond the point of redemption? You're not alone. Today we're going to look at an incredible story from the Bible, a parable shared by Jesus himself. This is the story of the prodigal son, and it's an unforgettable reminder of forgiveness, love, and redemption. Stick around, because this story will completely change the way you think about mistakes and second chances. Let's dive in. Our story begins with a father and his two sons. The father is a wealthy man, owning fields and livestock, ensuring his children have everything they could possibly need. The youngest son, however, becomes restless. He doesn't want to work on his father's estate anymore. He craves adventure, indulgence, and freedom. One day he makes a shocking request. He goes to his father and demands his share of the inheritance, a demand that, in those times, was both disrespectful and heart-wrenching. Essentially, the son was saying, "I want my share now, as if you're already dead." The father, though deeply hurt, agrees. He divides his assets and hands over the young man's portion. With his newfound wealth, the youngest son leaves home immediately to explore the world. He travels to a far-off land, far removed from his family and the stability he once knew. At first, everything seems exciting and fabulous. He squanders his money on luxurious living, wild parties, and a life of reckless pleasure. But before long, his fortune vanishes into thin air. The timing couldn't have been worse. A severe famine sweeps through the land. With no money, no friends, and nothing left of his inheritance, the young man's life takes a drastic turn. Eventually, he finds work, menial and degrading work. He is hired to feed pigs, a task that in Jewish society was considered utterly humiliating because pigs were unclean animals. Day by day, his pride crumbles. He becomes so hungry that even the scraps he feeds the pigs start looking appetizing. This once wealthy young man who lived without a care is now in the lowest valley of his life. This is where something incredible happens. In that rock-bottom moment, he comes to his senses. He remembers his father, his kindness, generosity, and even how his father's hired servants were treated better than he is now. Suddenly, he realizes that he must return home to his father and confess his wrongs. He knows he doesn't deserve to be reinstated as a son after all the hurt he caused, but perhaps, just perhaps, his father will allow him to work as a servant on the estate. With a heart full of shame but determined to repent, the young man begins his journey back. It's a long, exhausting trek, but he struggles onward, rehearsing his apology every step of the way. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you," he plans to say. "I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." Meanwhile, his father has not forgotten him, not for a single moment. Every day, the father scans the horizon, hoping, praying to see his lost son return. And then, one day, it happens. While the son is still a long way off, the father catches sight of him. Unable to contain his emotion, the father doesn't wait for his son to come closer. He runs. His aged legs move as fast as they can, carrying him toward his son. When the two finally meet, the father throws his arms around his son and kisses him. Such compassion, such forgiveness. The son begins his prepared speech. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father interrupts him, his joy overflowing. He orders his servants to bring the finest robe for his son, place a ring on his hand, and sandals on his feet. More than that, he commands a feast be prepared, a celebration for this momentous day. "This son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found," the father declares. But the story doesn't end there. The older brother, who has faithfully stayed behind, working on the estate, becomes furious when he hears the music and learns what's happening. He refuses to join the celebration. "I've worked for you all these years," he tells his father. "I've obeyed everything you've commanded, but you've never thrown a feast for me. And now, this son of yours who wasted your money on a reckless life comes back, and you celebrate him?" The father's response is powerful. "My son," he says to the elder, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And there it is, the lesson of the prodigal son. It's a story that shatters pride, teaches us humility, and reminds us of the boundless love of God. Whether you're the one who strayed or the one who stayed, this tale calls all of us to understand the transformative power of forgiveness and grace. So what would you do? Would you forgive like the father did? Or would you stand in judgment like the older brother? Remember, God celebrates every lost soul who finds their way back.